Hi, I'm Francesco Garripoli, and I'm here with Dr. Len Saputo. Hey, Len.
My dear friend, welcome.
We have an opportunity today to talk about traditional healing. And we've labeled this one, it always took a village to heal.
It does.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, we live in a community. We live in a universe where everything's connected to everything else, and everybody adds something a little bit different to it. And I think in the Native American tradition, everybody who was in the village did something to support the wellness of the village and, of course, of each individual. So it's like having a community of healers that are with you, who will listen and care, support the healing process, and then do what it takes to help with the symptoms, but also move us along our spiritual path. I look at that as what a village does to help us heal.
And wasn't the doctor in those ancient times, the doctor we call the medicine man or the shaman,
Indeed.
the alchemist even,
Yes.
was an integral part of that system. It didn't stand alone, right? Wasn't the doctor part of maybe a tribal process many times?
Oh, yeah, and ritual was a big part of it. I think that the doctor was someone who was specially trained, who had knowledge about certain herbs and approaches that they could take that would help us to get beyond our symptoms. But I think that was a deeper kind of healing too, because it was about what are the psychospiritual essences that led to our disease. Right. And they would do what they had and work with the belief system and see if they could empower you to have a belief system that you could get well.
And wasn't that the tribal dance, what that was all about, where you have a whole community there, maybe 50, 60, 70 people in that
Yes.
tribe, all dancing, all participating in the healing of a person?
Well, that's because the village is one entity, right?
Right.
It's a whole thing. It's a holistic concept. And the health of the community depends on the health of the individual.
Exactly.
If you want to look at it that way. But they really looked at it in a bigger sort of way, like we're all one.
Sure.
And again, referring back to Native American approaches to this, I love their idea of looking at the spirits of the ancestors,
Right.
of looking at the animals and all of the things that are in the universe as one thing, and having great respect for it. It's sort of like one big village. Of
And calling in that energy.
Yes, indeed.
It's not like I'm sick and what are you going to give me to make me heal, but how do we call in the ancestors? How do we call in those spirits?
Right, and are we using gratitude and humility as two of the biggest tools? Because we need all the help we can get. I love that concept, and it's something that we got into a few years ago when I started the Health Medicine Forum. It was like, we don't really have a village here in medicine, in the practice of medicine, where doctors are the ones that were at the top of the so-called pile. Things weren't working out so good because 50% of America has a chronic disease. There are about 1 million people that die every year, Francesco, at the hands of some things that happen in medicine.
It's hard to believe.
Even 400,000 die from antibiotics, or from drugs, not just antibiotics, every year. These are staggering numbers. And when you look at how people are doing, it's not that good. So we have to find a way, and what I was thinking back in 1994 is, how do we get together? How do we go beyond where the limits of our discipline stopped and be open to listening to what does a Chinese medicine doctor do? What's the role of things like Qigong and energy medicine? How about Ayurveda? What about alchemy? Things that we don't really examine much in the mainstream of medicine because we have this arrogant attitude that if we don't understand it, that we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to throw it out. It doesn't exist.
And we have this funny belief that we have grown over these millennia, and that whatever was old isn't good,
Exactly.
and whatever's new is good, so everybody wants the newest and the newest, and
How brainwashed can we get?
and somehow we have this illusion of time as this linear thing that gets better over time. And a lot of stuff's gotten better, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
There are things in these ancient times that were so efficient. There were medicinal resources that were growing right around the community.
Indeed.
That gave people and facilitated healing without much side effects.
Yeah,
Well,
whether it was
different than what we have now.
Well, it was the whole concept. We need to go back to the future to reclaim some of the kind of thinking and trust and faith in spirit because we've basically lost the role of spirit in healing today.
Yeah, I
and,
think
and the essence of medicine has degenerated to a place where now a lot of what we do is toxic, it's unaffordable, and it's something that is not working that well. So we have to go back to that place and find out the importance of the shaman. Well, what did a shaman do? He was there with you, or she was there with you,
Sure.
supporting and doing what it took to change your belief system and to guide you with the natural resources of the environment.
And wasn't a lot of it the belief system that they held about self?
Yes.
We have a certain belief system right now of a scientific view of this body, this sort of mathematically engineered body that when it's broke, you fix it just like a car.
Exactly.
And then we, fast backwards into a time when people saw themselves, as you said, an integral part of the community, integral part of spirit. They weren't just the physical body. The physical body was somehow influenced by the energy around them. And you could do something about that. And so maybe it was a chant. Maybe it was a mantra that you did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was some healing dance with feathers that the community did. We see that in so many cultures, there was healing around there that everybody brought the belief system up about healing, and the healing was facilitated.
Right, and it came from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's not like it is today where we are doing things to people instead of being with them to try and support their healing journey.
Yeah.
Because healing is a bigger prospect than just fixing the symptoms that we have, the physical symptoms. That's about curing symptoms. But the deeper healing, much different process. We're not taught that in medical school anymore. I mean, in fact, I don't know that we ever were. We talk around it, but in actuality, we don't look at the role of spirit in healing. We don't look at our relationship to spirit. We don't look at our relationship to one another. I remember back when I was in Duke Medical School, and they're saying, you're a scientist, you be detached, don't connect with your patient, don't do anything social with it. And I'm thinking, you serious? You want me to take somebody's life into my hands and expect them to just follow it robotically when I'm, maybe doing it wrong?
Sure.
They need to, my patients need to know me, and I need to know them at a very personal level. And I have no problem with those patients, if I want to be with them socially, to make it a social relationship as well, because why not? And I think the deepest changes that I can sometimes help people work through when they're ill is for them to know that I care. I'll listen deeply and I'll care.
When we have a medical system now where there's less than 7 minutes of interaction between the patient and
my
doctor
gosh,
on average.
It's a mechanical process.
And I think this takes such a sense of confidence away from people.
It
And
does.
in ancient times, I've traveled a lot of countries, and I watch how healing was facilitated, especially with the temples. The temples were a
Yes.
typical place in the Asian,
Sacred
in the
place.
mountains. There was a sacred place, and if you were sick, you might go to that temple because there was a spiritual healing that took place.
Yeah.
You would have the monks come to your house. They would bring special foods over. They would pray with you. There was a sense of not a religious healing, but a spiritual healing that took place, where the monks were always weaving themselves around the community. There was always a sense that we were connected.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's moving from information exchange to connection.
Yeah.
And that's an evolutionary step that takes you to a much deeper place where you're dealing with the essence of who is this person and what is their challenge and how can you support them to take responsibility in a way that will move them forward in their evolutionary path as a human on a spiritual journey.
And there's a real common sense part of that.
Indeed.
Because if I feel like people are watching out for me, if I feel like I can be part of this weekly chant at the temple,
Somebody
and
cares.
everybody is part of it, and somebody cares, and somebody's coming into my home and doing a blessing with the shaker,
Yes.
all of a sudden, when I do feel that sickness coming up, I'm not alone. I feel like I can do this. I got to get back into that groove. If you work in an office on the 74th floor and you're really not relating to your coworkers and you only have the job because you need that second job to
You
pay
think
for
you
your
do.
car and your mortgage and blah, 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 oh my gosh, you're going to get sick because you are in a sick environment.
Well, it's a separation. See, it's our separation from ourselves, from our community, from our universe, from our God, and it's the connection that takes us back into unity, that gives us a purpose in our life that's useful, that makes us realize that this is something that's important, and we're part of something big. That's why I like the word integral.
Sure.
It's not just the illness that we have by itself that needs to be dealt with. It's the human being who has the illness, and it's how they fit into their family structure and their communities and their state and country and universe. That's what the integral nature of illness and about a human being is. And if you forget that, or you ignore it, you're back to the Merck manual looking to see, now, this person has pancreatitis, these are the 7 things that you do right now.
Right. In ancient times, you would bring the community together, or at least the families that were involved in that disease together, and look at it.
Yes.
And we would see where there was the dysfunction. They wouldn't talk about it this way in the ancient Hawaiian culture.
Yeah,
now I live in Hawaii, and I love it there. In Kauai, we have the Ho'oponopono.
Yes.
And when there was a problem in the family or a disease in the family, the whole family got together and you talked it out.
Exactly.
And you stayed in that Ho'oponopono until there was a resolve. And it wasn't who was right and who was wrong, but
Right.
everybody contributed. And everybody understood that they contribute to that situation.
Sure.
That disharmony.
Well, and to be able to accept whatever happens is okay,
Right.
because you have trust, faith, that something is organizing all this, and there's purpose to it. It's not the kind of thing that just happens to you by chance. I don't believe, as Einstein said, that the universe throws dice.
No.
It's not. It's so organized. The energy fields that regulate what happens, to me, are stunning. You look at chance. You say it's chance. That, I got the parking place. Or, gee, the lights all turned right so I could be where I was trying to go. Or, gosh, something happened that I had an accident, but it saved me from something else. It's so organized. And as I've gotten older, I'm in awe of how that organization is protecting each of us, because it's the same energy field that we're all part of.
And those ancient cultures all had a word for chi for energy, mana for
Prana.
energy, prana for energy. There was a word in each of these languages, the ancient languages, that had a very fixed sense that there was some energy that permeated us. What's the word in English for the energy that permeates us?
Good question.
Good question. I mean, we can look back at maybe spirit or soul.
That's what I was thinking, but
yeah.
there's no real word, because
Yeah.
we've thrown it out.
We've thrown
We
it
don't
out.
understand it, but as I've gotten older, I just so know that the energy is real, and I have so much desire to want to connect with it. I want to be connected to you and to my whoever I'm with. I want to be in the moment. I want to look at it as one thing. And it's so hard in a world that's built on dualism in so many ways to get back to that feeling where you're connected. It's not about adversarial competition where you're trying to be narcissistic about having lots of materialism and things and power. That gets us in the wrong track. That's why we have wars and why we have revolutions and we don't evolve.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, it's obvious that it's an uphill battle for a lot of people. If you watch television all the time and you're battered with commercials that tell you that you're not good enough, and they tell you need to buy this product to look better, and you need to have this and that, and you know how hard it is if you're in that world, and we have to somehow disengage. You look back in the ancient times, what else was common with those ancient healing techniques was there was a sense of being in nature, and you went out into nature. I always love when I look at my little dog in Kauai, and whenever he gets sick or I could see he's off, he runs off into the forest, and he comes back.
He's chewing
something.
Right, he knows.
Like, how is that little
What's going
dog
on?
so much smarter than me?
Yeah.
Because he drops into his groove. He knows exactly, not from an intellectual place, but from I'm connected with nature, and it will give me what I need. And we all have that wisdom.
Where do you think all these ideas that you're spouting out now so freely are coming from?
Exactly.
Do you own those? Does it come from you? I think it flows through us. I sometimes marvel when I'm having a conversation like this at some of the things that come out of my mouth. I'm like, whoa, that was pretty cool. Where did that come from? Do I really understand it? No. Do I care if I understand it? I don't. But I do care that I'm in a place where I'm evolving somewhat by that, and where I'm looking at giving and sharing and connecting and loving, as opposed to being independent, adversarial, and competitive, which is what we're trained to do across the board, even in medicine, even the esteemed healing arts. It's still about power, about control, about dollars. Look at the conflicts of interest we have in healthcare today. How can we spend $2.7 trillion, $1 trillion a year on healthcare, and be ranked 37th in the world in overall quality of care? We need to go back to the energy of our self and the energy medicines that are important, that we're all connected to. Things like Qigong are just beautiful ways to connect with that. And they're there.
And we look at things like Qigong that has a lineage that goes back thousands of years. Maybe it wasn't called Qigong in the ancient times, but
Right.
when you follow those names back, they were called Xu Lian and Dao Yin. These systems in place 2000 BC.
Yeah.
You go back into yoga and you look back in the Vedic scriptures and you look back at yoga-like moves way back in ancient
Yes,
times.
indeed.
Every culture, even in the West, there was ancient wisdom in the early days, pre-Greek Etruscan times, where you see these people did exercises. The cultures on Crete and Knossos, the Minoans, they had exercises. There were certain things in place. What have we done to forget these things? How did we forget how music was so healing? We wonder why teens are grabbing their iPods and going for this. We're seeing things that were ancient, commonplace experiences for healing, and we're bringing them back into this modern world. And I think that each of us has to find what that is for themselves.
Well, it's a journey to wholeness. We talk about the return to good health as being the return to wholeness, and it doesn't mean just the intact human being with all of its perspectives. It's about coming back into wholeness, into unity with your family, your community, your state, your country,
Your
universe.
spirituality.
Well, that's where the real relationship is. It's our soul power. It's our soul healing that really is what does the biggest thing. And we don't even talk about that. Go to your doctor and talk about soul healing and see what happens.
And I remember I was in Bhutan and spent a lot of time in the mountains of Bhutan and visiting temples and having some really wonderful opportunities with the monks and the Rinpoches there. And I remember one time in this ancient temple that has been practicing the same rituals over and over in a particular Black Hat sect of Tibetan Buddhism. And you know how they do healing there? It's so beautiful. It's been the same way. They get the person who's not feeling so well to sit on that side of the temple, and they have the Tibetan longhorn. It's about 10 meters long.
My good, 10 meters
10
long?
meters long. And
Bigger than the didgeridoo.
yeah, and this person sits there and he gets into his groove, into his meditative state, and he starts blowing, and this deep vibration goes out, and the person who is in need of healing sits at the end, the open fluted end of
Feels
this,
the vibration.
and just vibrates. And I got to be able to experience that. I was healthy, and they wanted me to try it. And
Do you think that's what the Aboriginals do too with their didgeridoos?
I think we see how sound healing has played a major part in so many cultures, whether it was chants in ancient Europe, or whether it's didgeridoos in Australia, or the Tibetan longhorn in Tibet and Bhutan. Vibration carried through an intention, because those monks all prayed first, and you all sat around and ate red rice first, and you got into a kind of a nice groove, and everybody did some chants, and then when that Tibetan longhorn got played, you were in a place where you knew you were in something bigger than yourself, and whatever that pain or dis-ease just became this small little part of who you were. Instead of consuming you and saying, I am sick, you said, I am a healthy, integrated spirit in the universe, and this expression has just brought me back to that realization. And you watch spontaneous healing happen all the time.
I think it's a connection, with something bigger than yourself that takes you to a place where you can trust that you can be helped, and that belief does a lot. We talk about placebo a lot of the times. That's just placebo, and I'm going, yeah, it's placebo, but it's celebrated.
Exactly.
It doesn't cost anything. It works well. It's safe. I mean, what do you want?
Really.
And we're putting it down. I think it's largely because our culture is looking at the pharmaceutical industry, and they're saying, well, we got this drug here that's an SSRI antidepressant, and we think it's about 3% better than placebo, so the FDA has given us a license to sell it to you. And I'm going, yeah, that's true, but 30%, the bulk of what you have here, maybe 95% is the placebo effect, because you expect to get better. And that's been shown in studies that blow my mind. I couldn't believe it when I read them, because everybody thinks, yeah, the drugs are the big thing. Well, that's what we think but it's the placebo. It's what you think is going to happen. It's your belief system that does a lot of that healing.
And that was so much of the healing in ancient times, the tribal healing. Even in ancient Rome, they would, have frankincense and myrrh and oregano, and these were healing herbs.
They
and
still are today.
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
there was a power to them. They carried such a beautiful energy in those ancient times, and you had these healing herbs. You might carry them in a bag or mix them up in a tincture. Were they really facilitating that much healing? We know there's some antiseptic qualities in oregano and
They do
each
a lot of
thing.
interesting things. But maybe it's their energy that does it.
It was the energy and the intention and the spirit and that whole group think around it. And there's something beautiful and powerful about this.
Look at what we do today. We find something like oregano. We're saying, let's see, what's the active ingredient in this thing? Let's extract that, and we'll put it into a pill that has 1,000 times the amount, and we'll get the desired effect. And I'm going, nature's pretty clever. She's got a plant that probably can cure just about everything. If you just open your heart, you listen, you're open, you seek help, you connect with the universe at a deep level, you become one with it, and see what happens.
Right.
Do we have to go back thousands of years to find what we've lost?
We have to.
That's what's happening, because we're on the wrong track. The high-tech approach has got its brilliance. No question you'd want to save the things with gene therapy and stem cell therapy and the microsurgeries and what we can do to restore vision and people's joy. I mean, all these things that we can do are beautiful things, but that is not primary care medicine. It never will be. It never has been. It doesn't have any potential to be, because it's too invasive and it's doing things from the outside in. Plus, it's expensive and it's not safe. So we have to find a way to take our own responsibility, to become self-powered, to know who we are, and to use that knowledge and wisdom to change the way we live our life.
And to integrate those beautiful things. We've evolved to these places for a reason. They're efficient and they're wonderful, and they work better than the old ways. So, but you can't say, okay, I'm going to throw everything else out and go this way. I think what we're being asked to do is move into that future and hold on to this past, and bring in a presence that is integrated time with time, not just with technique, but with a timeliness and a wisdom and a thought system for both worlds.
Absolutely.
And then there's something magic that happens. I think then we waken up that potential in us.
There's one spectrum, high-tech and low-tech.
Yeah,
Right?
it's one
spectrum, and they merge together, and the wisdom of an experienced healer is what we need. And it might be something from internal medicine. It might be something from Native American medicine or Chinese medicine, or some practice like Qigong or Tai Chi or whatever, or Aboriginal stuff. I mean, look at the Aboriginals. What you know about them, because you've spent time with them. And it's so revolutionary compared to what we think, and we just miss out. And we ignore it because we don't understand it. It's like, how stupid can you get?
I know, you think about how the English came into Australia and they saw these animals there as humans, and they didn't even begin to ask a question, what do you know?
Yes.
When the English started cutting down trees in Australia, the Aborigines would stand around and they couldn't believe, because those trees were the ancestors. They were family members. And so without asking, we don't know what wisdom is there. I can't talk to my little dog and ask him what he knows, but I know in my heart the wisdom that is carried in that energy field.
Well, see, that's the mistake we make, as looking at ourselves as separate and independent, and it's all about us. And I'd like to cut that tree down because I want the wood, and maybe we'll burn it for power, or we'll make a house out of it. My God, why not go a little bit deeper and listen to the wisdom of those Aboriginals? They're saying, you don't understand. Why don't you listen? You can learn something from this.
Exactly.
And it's really critical, because you're destroying part of the universe. It's a major thing.
And we're all on that journey. I mean, there's parts of us that are in conflict all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's parts of each of us that has to go back into that past and trust and listen. We have this information on a deep genetic level.
Yes,
right? If we are alive today, we are carrying genetic information that has been propagated through the ages.
Exactly.
So I think we forget that we have within us this. We might not have it in an intellectual place, but we certainly have it
It's
when we
there
go
somewhere.
when we go into that quiet. We can pull up the shaman inside each of us. We can bring up that healing master inside each of us.
It's there.
We can bring up that medicine man who says, I can go out in the forest and I know that there's a solution. And maybe we might not want to go pick a plant and take it unless you learn a little more about the pharmacology of it. But we could go out in nature and start to commune with that energy and
yes.
open up and maybe ask. You know, there was, in ancient times, people always had an altar in their house. There was always a little corner of their house
Yeah.
that was that place that you prayed and gave thanks to,
Yeah.
put you in gratitude. You
Yes.
looked at it every day. It was usually in a place where it was very common. You'd walk by it all the time. These are ancient things we can do every day. Your altar could be this big.
Yeah.
But some place that keeps you in gratitude, something that keeps you in touch, that you are not just your mind, not just your body. And I think then we'll really honor the ancient history in a beautiful way.
I think it's the return to wholeness again.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to look at ourselves as fragmented, separate, independent parts, and that has gotten us in so much trouble. I mean, what we all crave is connection.
Yeah.
We want to be loved. We want to love people. I find the biggest joy in my life is to do something that's unconditional for somebody else, where I don't ask for anything in return and don't expect anything in return. I have a few patients that I treat like that who can't afford what I do. And when I'm finished helping them and they look at me and say, you mean you're not going to charge me? And they got a big tear in their eye, and I'm saying, I'm so happy for you
Yeah.
because you've gotten well, and I had the opportunity to be able to support you in some small way, thanks to the powers that have come through me from above.
And you do that with the healing circles, which I
Oh,
think is
yes.
great. I've got to participate in that a couple times, and it's an amazing experience to have 5, 6, 7, 8 healers
Of different disciplines.
of different disciplines sit around in a circle.
It's a council of healers. It's like the opportunity to be like a village, you know, to do whatever it is that's
For
gonna
one
be done
patient.
for one person, because you all care. And we don't charge for those circles. They are free.
It's beautiful.
And that's the best part about it, because a lot of these people don't have a lot of self-esteem, and they're going, what? You're a very educated doctor, and this person's a naturopath, and that person practices Chinese medicine and Qigong, or whatever it is that they do. And you want to do that to help me? Yes, we do.
What do you think makes the healing circle work? Why is it so effective?
There are two things. One is listening. I mean, really listening. It's not about arguing. It's not about taking a point of view. It's about listening. What is this person trying to say? And take it to a sacred place where there's deep respect and humility. That's number one. The second thing is that you care. And you show that. I'm here. I want to be with you. I'm putting 2 hours of my time in here because I want to. I want to see you get better. And then, of course, there's the technology. I know some things in medicine that might be helpful. You know some things in Qigong. Somebody else may know acupuncture and Ayurveda and Native American medicine, etc., etc. Yeah, the technology is good. But the two big things, listen and care. And the tears that flow of joy and happiness, so often in meetings like that, particularly if they're done respectfully, is a beautiful thing. And I couldn't imagine giving that practice up. I look forward to the Fridays and at the end of the week when we can say, well, this is what we'd like you to do, but we'd like an autobiography first so we can know more about you.
You know, I love how you do that, where somebody they have to write up a little bit about themselves first. Everybody reads that, so you get a
Yes.
little bit about the history and what the symptomology is and so
Yes,
forth.
yes.
So you come in almost knowing that person, and that person sits there, and all the practitioners sit around, and you facilitate. You're such a great facilitator.
We're just listening.
And you really inspire everybody to get into that place of compassionate, non-judgmental listening.
Acceptance.
And then each person of each discipline shares a little bit about what they know.
What they
And what I
think.
found that was very interesting, I think there was a lot of healing in the healers.
Absolutely.
Because somebody would say, wow, I don't know everything. And that's an interesting perspective I never thought of. And
Right.
wow, nutrition does make sense. And yeah, energy healing could fit into this.
And I get to walk in your shoes
Yeah.
for a little while, and I learn about what you're going through.
Yeah.
What a gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's a great experience. And I think I'd love to see the healing circle open up and more people do it around the United States, because I think this is a big step to go back into what happened in ancient times, whether it's Hawaiian
Exactly.
Ho'oponopono or the tribal healings in the mountains of Bhutan, or any kind of healing that took place in any village in ancient times.
Exactly.
It wasn't really the one-on-one with the doctor. It was a group facilitating an energy.
It was a community event. It was about the return to wholeness of the person with themselves, to be reintegrated with themselves and be self-powered, but also the relationship with the group. So it's the village that does the healing. And it's the support of the village that takes you to that level where you feel like you're supporting and being supported at the same time, and that you're important and an integral part of this village, because we're all here in your behalf as well as our own, because we need you. You're adding something that we need, respect, and cherish.
And isn't that what gets us sick sometimes, where we feel like we're not being heard?
Alone.
We feel like,
Yeah.
we
Why me?
get so angry and so stressed.
Yeah.
If National Institutes of Health is correct and says that 70% or more of disease is stress related,
Oh, yes.
well then all we have to start doing is looking, first baby step is, what can I do to start reducing that stress?
Exactly.
And for so many of us, not everybody, but for so many of us, stress is reduced when we start to feel heard, when we're part of something bigger. It's not just me against the world.
That's right.
But okay, wow, I've got, even if it's just the understand, I've got other people who understand my plight. I'm not alone in this. I've got some
Yes.
camaraderie in
Yes.
this process.
We're connected,
Yeah.
we care, and we're listening.
I think this is a beautiful
Magic.
part of what
It's
healing is. And how do we get our kids to understand that? How do we
Model it. We have to model
we
it.
have to model it.
And they have to watch it
Yeah.
and see it. It's not about saying, "Hey, this is what you should do, kid." You
Right.
know, it's not just that you have the power.
They've got to be
tell them.
folded into
They've
it.
got to be inspired
Yeah.
to want to do it, and they'll do that by example.
Yeah.
That's what the village does.
Yeah, and I think we're learning what this is. We're understanding what was so workable in ancient times that kept these villages surviving. You know, people
Sustainable.
forget about the sustainability of the Aboriginal society in Australia.
Yes.
40,000 years of contiguous history without border skirmishes,
Yeah.
without wars.
Wow.
These were a people, even though they spoke different languages all around the country, and Australia's a giant country, what's common is they all seem to have a prayer about peace.
Mm.
How could that be? Imagine chanting and praying and going on these walks where you just chanted and privately held this image about peace.
Exactly.
You know, you walk the song lines from waterhole to waterhole, holding this image of peace. And why weren't there border skirmishes? A lot of people wondered why weren't there battles, you know? Well, this tribe held certain birds sacred, and they ate all these berries. The tribe right next to them ate the birds and held the berries sacred.
Well, they both had a point of view, didn't they?
And
It was valid.
nobody overate, and these guys could come in and eat those birds, and it was okay because then over there they did that, and we didn't touch our birds, but over there we ate them, and these people respected us, and they kept a homeostatic intersocial relationship that kept that country in a beautifully static population level that didn't overeat, didn't hurt the environment. They never had wars. That was 40,000 years of history.
See, they evolved into something that we dream about, and we crave. I mean, it's something we all want, and we have to find a way to let go of the materialistic approach that we take to things, and the greed for power. And if we went back to that, we'd be so much happier, because we'd be living in the same vibration as the environment that we live in. Instead, here we're chopping down the trees, we're polluting the water, we're polluting the air, our food is no longer healthy. Wow, what species has had the wisdom to pollute its food, water, air, and soil besides a human being? Isn't that something?
It starts with each of us. And I think if there's anything to learn about the ancient history of healing and indigenous, tribal, traditional healing, is that we work as a tribe, we work as a group, but it starts with each of us. So
Yeah, well,
it's a good message.
we're a
Thanks
village.
for sharing this
We're a
today.
village. Thank you, Francesco.
Thanks, Lynn.